July 22nd, 1934. This was the day that James Hargus started on his path towards a date with the Oklahoma electric chair. Hargus, a native of San Antonio, Texas, would be sentenced to death for the shooting murder of Tulsa police officer L.D. Mitchell. Mitchell and Detective W.L. Martin had surprised Hargus during an attempted robbery of a drugstore. Hargus opened fire, wounding Martin and killing Mitchell. Gunshot wounds riddled the left arm of Hargus, and a .44 caliber slug went through his eye, piercing his brain. The 25-year-old Hargus, who would go on trial in Tulsa, would be sentenced to death in the electric chair on December 6, 1934. The jury taking only 35 minutes to find the young slayer guilty of murder in the first degree. Judge Harry Halley read the verdict at 5:30 p.m. Upon hearing his sentence, Hargus, looking almost stunned, turned and kissed his wife, who had sat beside him during the trial. Hargus bowed his head during the embrace, as if about to weep. He regained his composure and smiled. His mother, who had also sat by him, reached over and patted her condemned son on the shoulder. There were no tears, no words were spoken. He kissed his mother and was then removed swiftly from the courtroom by a deputy sheriff. The date for James Hargus to keep his appointment with the electric chair was set for 1 minute past midnight on April 24, 1936. James Hargus, now 27, spent his last day visiting with family members. His wife, mother, and 7-year-old son, Marvin, were admitted to the prison earlier in the day to spend the final hours with Hargus. He had bid his last farewells to the inmates on death row earlier in the morning, before being moved to the holding cell, just 20 steps from the electric chair. Speaking to prison officials earlier in the day, Hargus would say, "I was forced to do what I did. The officers shot first. I had to shoot to protect myself." Eating a last meal of fried chicken, gravy, and cherry pie. The assistant warden came to give Hargus the news that the governor would not interfere with his date with death. The execution would go ahead as planned. Walking alertly, with a smile on his face, James Hargus walked into the death chamber at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in Allister at 12:01 a.m. Dressed in a black suit with tie, Hargus, still smiling, turned to the witnesses and said, "I just have to wish you good luck and goodbye. I'd like to make a long speech, but the warden says not, so I'll sit down and die while you men watch me." His round, plump face, as white as snow, bleached from more than a year's stay on death row. Now, seated in the chair, prison officials worked almost frantically to strap the condemned man down. Witnesses looked on tensely, some looking noticeably pale. Silence filled the room. The death mask was placed over the smiling face of Hargus, the electrode fixed to his shaved head and left leg. Everything was now ready. Rich Owen, state-appointed executor, stepped to the control panel and turned the dial, sending 2,000 volts of electricity through the body of James Hargus. His body lurched forward and upward as the juice hit him. The body kept this composure for the full 2 minutes the current flowed. The face had turned deep reddish in color and swelled out of the openings of the mask. Saliva ran fluently from his mouth and dripped from behind the mask and onto the chest. His fist was clenched in a deadly grip. His muscles were drawn in agony. The 2 minutes were up, and executioner turned off the electricity. The body of Hargus slumped in the chair. Physicians made their checks. A pale blue steam arose from the head as the executioner removed the death cap from the cleanly shaved head. A white sheet was thrown over the body, and at 12:12 a.m., James Hargus was pronounced dead. An ambulance waited outside the prison, awaiting to transfer the body to a local undertaker. Witnesses were instructed to leave the execution chamber. James Hargus was executed at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary on April 24, 1936.